It is 1 minute to midnight on December 31st, 2014. A group of separatists from the Sturm B battalion are preparing inside the basement of the General Hospital building in the city of Vigadov. Among them is Vyacheslav Yuri Kirillovich, a former student at the Bryansk Institute of Engineering who was expelled after being caught making a bomb. He would have served 35 years if Bryansk commander Nikita Voronov hadn't recruited him personally after seeing his potential. Kirillovich believes he owes his life to Nikita Voronov, and as a gesture of gratitude, he has spent the last 2 years creating 299 bombs, ranging from crude pipe bombs to remotely detonated underground IEDs for the Bryansk separatist movement. Right now, he is about to finish his 300th bomb. This particular piece is made from a 150mm artillery shell and is detonated using an Xbox 360 controller that is connected to the shell using a 300-meter long wire. Suddenly, the clock in front of him strikes midnight, and his 300th bomb is finished.
Don't go past
Oh my god! Oh my god!
A few weeks prior, BSM intelligence reported of a large buildup of Novyrussian forces between December 1st and 7th, 2014, around the Novogorsk-Vygatov conglomeration. This accumulation of personnel and equipment continued to grow well into the last quarter of December, which prompted BSM High Command to begin diverting units there in preparation for the imminent offensive. The formations that were deployed by both sides in this conglomeration are as follows. Initially, the NFA deployed the 12th Heimdall Mechanized Infantry Brigade, led by ex-Teutonic Commander Contacts. This brigade consisted of the 1st Volzhino Operational Battalion manned by Rogov veterans and commanded by Oskar Bogdansky, the 2nd Mechanized Company of the 2nd Novyrus Operational Battalion, led by Latishka, the 3rd São Viriato Portuguese-Brazilian Volunteer Battalion, and the 12th Hernib Tank Company for the initial assault. Once these units manage to get a foothold in the city, they will then be reinforced by the Desna Battalion of the Novyrus Federal Guard, the 1st Company of the Bryanshina Battalion, as well as 1st and 2nd Companies from the Tactical Police Units of the Novyrussian Federal Police. Their flanks are guarded by the 1st Battalion of the 13th Sozh Mechanized Brigade and the 3rd Battalion of the 227th Mechanized Brigade. In the rear, there is the small but highly motivated Novyrussian Order Corps, a paramilitary unit tasked with using all means necessary to curb partisan activity in the rear. These formations are tasked with capturing the strategically important supply hub of the Novogorsk-Vygatov conglomeration, and if they are successful, they will be able to use it as a staging area for the possible decapitation of the separatist capital of Bryansk. The separatist defenders, on the other hand, are primarily separate formations that aren't part of any brigades. Firstly, there is the Bryansk Orthodox Volunteer Army Battalion, then the 1st Batko Martyrs Battalion led by Burhanwani, which was armed with VBIEDs, the company-sized Sabotage, Assault and Reconnaissance Group, or DRG Ritsar, led by Mikhail Arambov, the Plamia Light Infantry Company, led by Alexei Girgovich, Sturm B Battalion, commanded by 35-year-old Nikita Voronov, and the only armored support that they had was from the Korshun BMB-2, led by Yaroslav, which was literally just one BMB-2. Finally, there were 2 barrier platoons from the Bryansk MVD. The NFA will use approximately 4,400 men and 60 vehicles of all types for the main assault, 1,200 men and 30 vehicles to guard the flanks, and 340 nationalists performing anti-partisan operations in the rear for a total of 4,940 men and 90 vehicles of all types, supported by about 80 artillery pieces. The BSM, on the other hand, were only able to muster approximately 3,000 men, supported by 30 vehicles of all types and 30 artillery pieces. Despite being outnumbered, however, they were highly motivated and confident that the offensive could be halted like in 2011 and 2014. A column consisting of various Heimdall units are heading southbound towards the western entrance of Vygadov. This platoon-sized element intends to establish a foothold as well as a forward operating base in Sector Lark. The column drives past a rusting Humvee with a Bryansk flag planted on it. It is one of theirs, and the men worry that the same thing will happen to them. A few hundred meters to the east, within the many apartments of the city, BSM fighters are observing the column through their binoculars while clutching their weapons tightly. They waited and waited silently for the order to open fire, and when the entire column steps into the pre-established kill zone, Nikita Voronov gives the order to commence the ambush over the radio, and at that moment, the separatists unleash a hail of bullets upon the column, forcing its riders to dismount. BSM fighters cheer when an IED explodes and destroys the leading Humvee along with the enemy soldiers in it. However, their celebration is cut short when the enemy column returns fire and moves behind a tree line, making it difficult for the defenders to land any shots. 100 meters away, a fighter from the Plamia company with the call sign Alec is holding an Xbox controller and watches as the column with infantry at the front approaches a specific tree line. And when they get close enough, he presses the LT button 3 times, sending a signal through a wire connected to the IEDs, which instantly kills 5 enemy soldiers. The explosion is followed by another one that kills 1 more. The T-72, however, is unaffected by the explosions. These IEDs were of course made by Kirillovich. Despite the casualties, the Novyrussians seem to be undeterred and continue to press forward until they reach 2 of the 4 sectors of Vygadov, which are Taipan and Lark. There, the city defenders will face off against the Novyrussians in close combat. In the Taipan sector, a Humvee squad from the Vygatov battalion was engaged in street battles with separatist forces. Fortunately for these Lusophone volunteers, there was a T-72 nearby commanded by Jahangir from the Kharnib company. A few minutes ago, his tank was in the middle of the column, but now it stands in the middle of a road with nothing between it and the city defenders. It is an easy target that anti-tank teams are already working to destroy. While slowly reversing into a defilade on the side of the road, it was hit by an RPG round, destroying most of the reactive armor on its front hull. The separatist who fired the shot tried to get to cover, but it was too late as the tank's gunner had already sent a heat shell flying towards him, which kills him instantly. Jahangir's T-72 fired another shot around the same area before stopping at the defilade. The tank was stationary for quite some time, scanning its surroundings for enemies, but then it started to move forward again. As brave as the crew may seem, it will later become clear that moving forward was a mistake, as their tank is hit again in the front hull by an RPG. A few seconds later, the 3rd and 4th RPG rounds hit it, and while reversing, a 5th RPG round is fired but misses. And finally, the tank is penetrated by the 6th RPG round, which cooks the ammunition inside, vaporizing Jahangir and his crew. After Jahangir's T-72 was destroyed, the aforementioned Vygatov squad moved away from Taipan towards Sector Lark, where they successfully seized one of the apartments. Not long after, the men were reinforced by squads from Volzhino and Novyrus, as seen in this footage reported by Trooper, in which a section of Novyrussian soldiers moved past Vygatov's apartment without a separatist in sight. At this point, BSM High Command was aware of the Novyrussians making significant territorial gains after having effectively captured 6 apartments. Furthermore, they were already attacking 3 more apartments, which the defenders will lose before nightfall. BSM High Command understood that the manpower issues were beginning to show. However, they remained adamant and weren't discouraged one bit from defending the city. Close to Sector Lark, there was a small RPG team from Nikita Voronov's Sturm B battalion, and this RPG team, led by call sign Judas, was working to destroy NFA reinforcements. They concealed themselves using the grass and vegetation, and from there they watched as a Humvee drives forward and is subsequently destroyed by an IED. The men cheered upon its destruction. However, the celebration was short-lived, as their team leader realizes that they are too close to the NFA's route because he had read the map wrong, meaning that now they have to reposition. While moving back, they spotted a T-72 driving past them. The vehicle was rolling towards Sector Lark and appeared to be unaware of them. Judas recognizes the opportunity and orders his teammates to destroy it. One member, whose name is Ilya, gets close enough to the T-72, and while standing, he fires a tandem round that instantly destroys the engine and kills 2 crewmen in the turret. The only crew member who managed to bail out was the driver, and when he stuck his foot on the ground, it was clear that he had given up completely. He did not try to take cover or run away, he instead stared off into the distance while his tank is engulfed in flames. Judas could hear Ilya curse the driver over the radio, but a loud explosion from a fragmentation round stopped him from saying one more word. An NFA BMP-2 commanded by Dremkov veteran Ruslan had just swept in and killed the entire RPG team. It stopped by the destroyed T-72 to pick up the driver, but no matter what Ruslan said, the driver simply ignored him. The BMP-2 commander understood that the longer his BMP-2 is stationary, the more likely that we'll get hit, especially with the roaming DRGs. So he decided to leave the driver behind instead of wasting another minute trying to call onto him. A few minutes later, while stationary in Lark, Ruslan's BMP-2 will be destroyed along with its crew by an RPG.
Oh my god!
By the end of the first day, the NFA had successfully consolidated a majority of their gains in western Lark, apart from the houses along the Constantinople road, which remains a gray zone for both sides. Not only that, but an FOB was also established within the same sector and another one just outside of it. as well as 3 MSRs or supply routes feeding the 2 locations. BSM High Command understands that they're in a very precarious spot now, with the NFA being able to use the high rises and basements to accumulate large numbers of personnel and equipment for future assaults. This brings them to the conclusion that they must retake Western Lark before the Novyrussian presence there could grow, while at the same time ramping up DRG infiltrations to disrupt enemy logistics and reinforcements as much as possible along the 3 MSRs. To bolster morale, at night Father Fyodor from the Orthodox Metropolitan of the Orthodox Church in the Bryansk lands paid a visit to the city defenders. The soldiers gathered as Father Fyodor gave a sermon while standing at the end of a hallway of one of the floors of the many apartments in Vygadov. Some of them had to watch through the doors or while standing on stairs, as the hallway was just too cramped. This particular hallway was even furnished with modest but nonetheless festive decorations, as Christmas was coming up. There was even a small tree in the corner. All of the soldiers were making the sign of the cross on their chest as a show of faith, and some even held icons. In contrast to Father Fyodor's clean appearance, the soldiers were dusty-faced, all of them had injuries of some kind, and most had not had a decent bath in weeks. One soldier, Ivanov, recounted being in the presence of Father Fyodor. After Father Fyodor had left, the city defenders returned to their assigned tasks. One of it was air defense, and one of the soldiers who performed it was Alexei. Fueled by 3 Red Bulls, he stood at the rooftop of a Brezhnevka in Sector Albatross for hours, scanning the sky for any signs of the Novyrussian Air Force, while listening closely to every radio report. He claims that, because he's consumed so much caffeine, he's able to see in the dark, but his colleagues doubt him. After some time, he could hear the distinctive roar of a jet engine approaching from the distance. To make sure that he isn't hallucinating from insomnia, he asks the other air defense batteries if they could hear it too, and they affirmed him. So, he immediately armed his manpad while the engines grew louder. His radio became filled with the callouts, spotlights all over the city were activated, and everybody was woken up. He aimed his manpad at a pale green dot in the darkness and was able to get a lock on it. A split second later, he could see the A4 Skyhawks clearly, as it was highlighted by a spotlight, and he, along with the other air defense batteries, opened fire. He managed to shoot one down, but by then the Skyhawks already hit multiple buildings and left. The Skyhawks were gone, but it wasn't over yet. About an hour later, the shelling began, and it lasted until dawn. It was the morning of January 2nd, 2015, and the Novyrussians had just deployed 13,607 kilograms of air ordnance, followed by 4,590 kilograms of shells from artillery and mortars on Vigadov. But this did not break the city defenders' will, and each defender simply returned to their assigned tasks. Most importantly, the assault on Western Lark. As mentioned earlier, BSM High Command acknowledged the need to retake Western Lark, starting with 3 apartments labeled as Objective Stalinka. The formation assigned with this task was the Sturm B Battalion, and they were divided into 2 directions of attack. A stronger platoon-sized element coming in from up north in Sector Taipan, and a smaller force attacking from Eastern Lark. Both of these directions were supported by a number of RPG and SPG teams who were going to suppress the several squad-sized elements occupying Objective Stalinka, and these occupiers were from the Volzhino, Vygatov, and possibly the Novyrus battalions. The order to commence the attack was passed down from battalion to the squad level, and at 8 a.m. sharp, the stormtroopers began approaching Objective Stalinka. It didn't take long for the enemy to spot the platoon and open fire, causing them to break formation. Instead of rapidly approaching the apartments, they were now scattered all over the suburbs along the Constantinople road. To make matters worse, they hadn't crossed the main obstacle yet, that being the large open ground between the suburbs and Objective Stalinka. In this context, several smoke grenades would be deployed to conceal the attack. However, the stormtroopers didn't have any. In addition, Objective Stalinka was situated on higher ground, further elevating the apartment's height. Furthermore, BSM RPG and SPG teams were hitting the apartment windows as best as they could, but failed to overwhelm the Novyrussians. Rogov Tremkov veteran and Volzhino member callsign Roman said that almost every second a fragmentation round hit the windows, which was noted as an annoyance by his colleagues. At this point, the assault had become stagnant and casualties were mounting, leading BSM High Command to deploy a so-called martyrdom truck, as a last-ditch effort to overwhelm the Novyrussians. This truck was covered in thick layers of scrap metal sourced from industrial buildings and cannibalized vehicles, the quality of which was doubted but proved its worth as the truck approached Stalinka while shrugging off several rounds before ramming the wall and detonating, collapsing most of the apartment which was occupied by Volzhino. Although this was a massive blow for the Novyrussian enemy, as it resulted in them losing a tactically and strategically significant building, along with an entire squad of soldiers, it still did not save the assault, and the Sturm B had to retreat without making any progress whatsoever. Now with the BSM assault blunted, the NFA is able to send 2 squads from the Desna battalion to seize the slums east of Stalinka. These slums are very different from other parts of Sector Lark, as there are only fragile wooden houses there. Furthermore, the houses are only 2 stories tall at most and are surrounded by concrete high-rises on 3 sides. These Desna battalion members are now in a similar position to Sturm B during the assault on Stalinka, and soon a firefight will erupt between them and the city defenders. One soldier in Squad 2 who went by the call sign Nebesa is assigned by squad leader Zvezda to guard their right flank. Nebesa does so dutifully and maintains his position even as bullets are flying past him. After a while, he spots movement a few houses away from him, but before he could aim at the helmets poking just above the fences, a fragmentation grenade lands next to him. He glanced at it for a split second before it exploded and pushed him back. Miraculously, the grenade did not kill him despite being so close. However, his ears were now ringing, and according to Nebesa himself, he wanted to scream out because the pain was so unbearable it felt like his ears had been torn off even though they hadn't. He composed himself after a moment and fired his rifle at where he last saw the enemy. An embedded journalist approaches him with a camera to question him about where Zvezda is, but of course he could not understand a word that he was saying, so Nebesa simply tells him that he's deaf. Realizing this, the journalist went away to continue his search, but at that moment, another grenade landed nearby and exploded. Incredibly, the journalist was unscathed, but Nebesa started screaming as the ringing in his ear became louder. The journalist's call sign was Saber, and he along with Nebesa would survive Vygatov, albeit with lifelong hearing loss. He was never able to find Zvezda, as the squad leader would later die from an RPG while retreating due to the slum's untenable position. To the shock of the battered Novyrussian soldiers in Western Lark, the Sturm B battalion attempted yet another assault on objective Stalinka. This attack was possibly bolstered with the addition of stormtrooper squads from Plamia and Ritsar. A Volzhino squad is about to meet the attackers head-on just north of the apartments, but before they could even put up a fight, 2 of their members are shot, and shortly afterwards, their squad leader also dies, forcing the rest to retreat. The Novyrussians are further overwhelmed when a smokescreen is deployed, which obscures their line of sight. The smokescreen really
so many
did
of them.
come
They're
as a surprise to the
horde, bro.
defenders, because previous attacks did not utilize anything of that sort. However, it turned out that the number of stormtroopers that entered objective Stalinka using the smokescreen was minimal. Nevertheless, reinforcements from other parts of Western Lark were called in to help contain this leakage and to seek out the infiltrators who are now hiding in the high-rises. In the end, the BSM assault was successfully halted once more. This time, however, the BSM did get much closer to retaking objective Stalinka, as by then, the enemy squads defending it were severely degraded and had to be rotated out by nightfall for reorganizing.
Yo, hold here. Don't go
This
back
section
to
on the
yet.
tree line is clear, Raiden.
Don't go past.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
IED. Oh, RPG in front of us on the road.
RPG in front, alright, reverse. The early morning bombing and shelling was carried out under the same logic that the NFA used when finding Dremkov. That is, by destroying the buildings, the NFA completely removes the task of room clearing, thereby speeding up progress. But they shot themselves in the foot when they shelled one of their own apartments and attempted to seize a neighborhood that was surrounded by high-rises instead of taking a foothold in the taller buildings. And of course, these Desna battalion members were pushed back. Unfortunately for the Bryansk separatist movement, the NFA's grip on Western Lark remained strong even after sustaining significant casualties and losing 2 buildings, which is possible thanks to the large accumulation of troops in the rest of Western Lark. Otherwise, the losses could have never been replaced in time, and objective Stalinka would certainly fall into separatist hands. In the end, the lines of control looked like this, with a big gray zone or no man's land separating NFA-controlled Western Lark and BSM-controlled Eastern Lark, Taipan, Albatross, and Baron, the most notable gray zone being the houses north of Stalinka, which neither side wanted due to its lower elevation. We can also see that the NFA's control over their supply routes remained firm, despite DRG infiltrations. This marks the ending of Part 1. The next and last 2 days of the battle will be covered in the second part, during which the fighting will intensify as the NFA ramps up the frequency of shelling and continues to probe BSM defenses.
They took the apartment complex.
Tank missed me, tank missed me, I'm going, tank missed me, I'm going. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
It takes 8 seconds, by the way, to explode. Just hit him, and then it,
Detonate. Allahu Akbar, I got him. I got the tank.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
tank is down from over.